Okay, I'm going to tell you several stories about Tom Oye. Now, one of the first things is that he taught me that Japanese names always have at least two syllables. And so it's not Oi, it's Oye. And he was working in, I think he was up in Washington State when the day of Pearl Harbor came. And his girlfriend, who later becomes his wife, is with him. And at the end of the day, when he goes to put her back on a bus to send her back home, the bus driver refuses to let her get on, and he says, "I'm not carrying any Japs." And so from the very first day, they find out just how much prejudice there is against Japanese Americans. Now, she eventually lost her teaching job because she lived over 10 miles away, and there was no public transportation. There was no cab or bus or way that she could get to work, and so they just fired her, and that's what was going on. Now, they were put into internment camps, as you know. When the opportunity came for Japanese American men to work as soldiers, Tom Oye had volunteered. And what was really interesting is that one day FDR was supposed to have visited the camp, and Mr. Oye says that all the Japanese American soldiers were put in a hangar and guns were trained on them. They were told that under absolutely no way that they were going to be seen by or that they would see the president, and they were under armed guard. Now, time goes on, and as you know, it takes like 5 presidents before they finally get around to apologizing to the Japanese Americans for what happened. And they gave those who were still alive $20,000 as kind of a sorry. And Mr. Oye and his wife took the money and they put it into scholarships for students of Japanese American ancestry. Now, the thing that still gives me chills is that when I first started doing this, my colleague and I, Galene Erickson and I, were doing a discrimination unit. She was teaching in 8th grade. She was teaching Anne Frank, and I, in 8th grade at the time, was teaching geography. And so we came up with a project that would use the geography of Europe and Asia and everything, and tie that into World War II. What did the geography have to do with it? As part of that, we were fortunate to be able to get a lot of people who had worked with discrimination or were discriminated against. And so we had people who were Hitler's Youth. We had people who had been kids in Japan during World War II. We had people in the resistance. We had some of the first black people to be living in Edina in current times. And so we had all these stories that the kids could hear, and they could choose who they wanted to hear. Well, I had Mr. Oye here, and then I had a gentleman who had been through the Bataan Death March. And the gentleman who had fought and was held captive by the Japanese said, "I'm very sorry. I know that gentleman is probably a fine gentleman, but I simply cannot be in the same room with him because I start to have flashbacks." So I said, okay. And I went and talked to Mr. Oye, told him the situation, and he said, "Fine, I'll stay. If I see him, I'll get out of the room. I'll go elsewhere." And so we went through the day, and as the day was ending, I walked by the hospitality room we had for all the speakers, and there was Mr. Oye sitting next to the man. And I just went, oh dear, and I went in and said, "Is there anything I can do to help?" And the man who had been in Bataan, and the Japanese prisoner, had said, no, you need to let him stay, and we need to talk. And so they talked. And later, the gentleman came up to me and said that this was worth more than any therapy he had had all the time since World War II. And that he was really doing well, and he really appreciated the opportunity to talk to such a fine, upstanding man as Mr. Oye. So it was just amazing. It was so good for my kids, but it was really, really good for them personally, and for that man especially. So that was really cool.